And today I have lots of really awesome resources for you to share for quarter three. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we're going to get started. All right. So some science updates and announcements first. Our next grade virtual CCC meeting date, where we meet 3 through 5 on teams like we did yesterday, will be on March 16th at 2:45, and it will be recorded and posted to our grade level science teams for later viewing if necessary, if you need to, along with the PowerPoint. Other news and updates, CTLS updates. 3rd through 5th grade science workshop model lessons for quarter 3 have been uploaded. So you guys are going to be trained on science workshop model on January 5th, and we already have a unit for you to try that out with your classroom. And I'm going to be giving you some resources today on how to do that. But those science workshop model units are underneath Topic Navigator. So you'll go to your 3rd grade science course and then head over to Topic Navigator. It's a drop-down menu. You'll pick a topic or a unit and then scroll down to instructional strategies, and you will find those on the right-hand side. Also, we do have a virtual field trip document uploaded to the course resources tab for you. Our Title I Science coach, Kelly Bodner, created this document for us. It is a working document, so you can add things to it as well. And then if you're doing any really cool science activities, maybe a cool lab or investigation or hosting a virtual science event of some kind, the science department would love the link to that so we can join you virtually. We won't be able to join you in person just yet, but hopefully one day soon. But the link to that form is right there. And I also have included it in the 3rd grade science teams for you as well. About a couple of months ago, I think, is when I posted that. So that will be in the general setting of your 3rd grade teams. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to go over the quarter 3 science standards, and we're going to look at some lesson resources and activities that I've pulled for you that aren't necessarily on CTLS Teach that you could use with your students. And then I'll be available for any questions and to hear any feedback that you guys have. All right, so this is your 3rd grade teaching and learning framework. It's located in CTLS Teach under the Course Navigator tab. For quarter 3, if you look at our pacing guide, we have Georgia Habitats and Adaptations running for 9 weeks, and then the beginning of conservation and recycling for 6 weeks. So we do give you, this is a suggested pacing guide. We do know things come up and things have to switch around, and that's perfectly fine as long as we're getting through all of those standards by the end of the year. Specifically today, we're going to be focusing on adaptations and conservation and recycling. All right, so let's look at those standards. So I'm going to go through our standards, and I'm going to give you some background information to help you teach these standards, these adaptation standards, and also with conservation and recycling. So we do in our Georgia Standards of Excellence for Science, every single standard starts with the same 3 words: obtain, evaluate, and communicate information. And that's important because those are science and engineering practices that have been embedded within our standards. And then we have those elements at the bottom that I have unpacked for you and highlighted what the students are being asked to do, those science and engineering practices, what scientists do. I've highlighted in yellow, and we'll unpack that and talk about that a little bit. So for Georgia Habitats and Adaptations, the standard is obtain, evaluate, and communicate information about the similarities and differences between plants, animals, and habitats found within geographic regions. And we have the Blue Ridge, Piedmont, Coastal Plain, Valley and Ridge, Appalachian Plateau. You could also do coastal region of Georgia. Within the coastal plains, we could do the Atlantic coast too if you wanted to. So element A is ask questions to differentiate between plants and animals and habitats found within Georgia's geographic regions. You guys are hitting this up pretty hard, probably right about now. And they're going to ask those questions easily how they're going to be able to do this, and the way you can integrate this in your classroom instruction is through that authentic phenomenon that we're going to show them at the beginning of the unit or the lessons. Element B is what we're going to be focusing on, and C for this unit is identify external features and adaptations. And those examples are camouflage, hibernation, protection, migration, and mimicry of animals to construct an explanation of how these features and adaptations allow them to survive. And then element C is use evidence to construct an explanation of why some organisms can thrive in one habitat and not another. And when you see that use evidence to construct an explanation, that's what we need them to do. So after all they're learning through the unit, we need an explanation. It could be written, it can be a speech, it can be a presentation, it could be a summative assessment, it could be a model of something, but they have to be able to explain with their evidence of why those organisms can thrive. So when we think about adaptation specifically, because that's what I'm focusing on with you guys today, some teacher background that you need to know in order to teach these standards to students with adaptations is that both animals and plants are well suited really to survive and reproduce because they can adapt or change in a beneficial way to new conditions and surroundings. So, I mean, when you think about it, animals have been adapting and changing for millions of years, right? Organisms can adapt to the environment in a variety of ways. So some of these adjustments are made in response to daily changes or cyclic changes really that the organism may experience, such as when the color of a chameleon changes to blend in with the surrounding, or think about a dog shedding its thick coat of fur at the start of spring. So in nature, when a genetic change occurs that helps a plant or animal to survive, it's called an adaptation. The plants and animals with favorable traits or those adaptations are more likely to survive and have babies than animals who lack those traits. So some of the things, some of the ways that adaptations can come about, or like the examples in the standard, camouflage. Camouflage is a different external feature of an animal, like big ears or thick coats, or mimicry, which is think about the stick bug, like how it actually looks like a stick. And then behavior, such as hibernation for Arctic animals or migration for birds to warmer or cooler climates, depending on the season, is an adaptation as well. And then other protective improvements, such as toxic venom for a snake or a harder shell for a turtle, or some ways that they're protective. They're protecting their cell. The organisms are using protection to improve their lifespan. So when animals adapt daily to their changing environment, the process of adaptation occurs gradually over time as organisms with those favorable traits are selected for survival and reproduction. So that's just some background knowledge on adaptations. So let's move over to conservation and recycling, one of my favorite units in third grade. So students will obtain, evaluate, and communicate information about the effects of pollution. So we're talking about air, land, and water pollution, and humans on the environment. So element A is ask questions again, to collect information and create records of sources and effects of pollution on the plants and animals of Georgia. And B, explore research and communicate solutions, such as conservation of resources, recycling materials to protect plants and animals of Georgia. So when you think about pollution, so many years ago, people were dealing with pollution from animal waste, coal ash, and open dumps, right? So today, we're dealing with pesticides, fertilizers, carbon monoxide, even acid rain, radiation, and lots of other pollutants in our world. Today, more than 72% of our trash ends up in landfills, and we recycle or reuse about only 28% of that. So pollution can affect, think about it, human health. It can limit our activities. It can harm wildlife and habitats and has the potential to disrupt global climate patterns around the world. It's definitely a serious problem with no single cause, but it seems we've spent much of our efforts cleaning up pollution rather than preventing it, and experts are now looking more to reducing the pollution we produce in the first place. So you as a teacher, you have the unique opportunity to better educate our students and our citizens about pollution, you know, the sources and the consequences. And you also have the opportunity to help students realize the role that they play in helping find those solutions to the problem of pollution. So let's get into some activities. Before we do that, always forget about my phenomenon. Okay, so we are going to start every science workshop model unit in science with an authentic phenomenon. That can be a video clip, it can be a picture, it can be a demonstration, it can be an investigation, it can be a nature walk. But that phenomenon is something that's naturally occurring in nature, and we want it to ignite questioning within our students. So you're going to show your students the phenomenon, and they're going to write down questions and post them on a driving question board. It's basically like an anchor chart that you're going to use for the entire unit. The teacher is going to use those questions to motivate the students to then do activities to help them find the answers. So that can be researching, investigating, doing hands-on, engaging science activities, all of that. But if you see the visual over here, after they generate questions, it says students use those science and engineering practices to answer those questions. And then we connect them to the science content and those cross-cutting concepts. So let me give you an example. So here we have Georgia animal and plant adaptations. Anchoring phenomenon right here is this beautiful photograph of a jackrabbit. I would throw that picture up on my board for about 30 seconds or so and have students just stare at that picture and come up with questions. So they're going to create questions on a sticky note, or they can hold it up on a whiteboard. Your remote learners can put it, you can use a digital whiteboard like Whiteboard-Fi, or even just a Word document in OneDrive for your remote students to write their questions down. And you're going to use those questions to create question board. And you're going to use it and come back to this picture every day through the unit. Some prompting questions to differentiate for your students that might need a little scaffolding would be: what animal is pictured? What habitat does the animal thrive in? What physical feature allows this animal to survive in the habitat? And so what we have for you on CTLS Teach is a science workshop model 2-week unit plan for adaptations. The first week is going to be introducing the phenomenon on Monday and doing that guiding question board and maybe a read aloud. And then Tuesday through Thursday, the students will work through stations. And then on the second week, they'll work through a different set of stations on Monday through Thursday. And then we've left Friday for an assessment day. So here are some activities I have pulled for you from other resources that you might not have access to, but I have saved them all to a Google Drive folder for you, and I'm going to throw that into the Teams after this preview. But the first activity is a plant adaptation investigation. You guys remember back in the day when we used to take those the celery plant and we would color them, or we would color the flowers in those beakers. This is similar, but they're going to work in a small group to investigate the adaptations that help living things survive. So you're going to have 2 bowls with some measured water, a celery plant in one, and a small barrel cactus in another. And you're basically going to put some water in those bowls. You're going to measure out a half a cup in each. And you're going to weigh, after you do that, you're going to weigh your plants, and then you're going to weigh them after an hour. And then you're going to record on your data sheet right here the amount of water, the daily weight of each plant, and observe daily what it looks like. So this is really to reiterate, and look, you have preliminary explanations where they're comparing and contrasting how much was absorbed and how much it held. So you're really looking at the different types of plants, and you can then, after you see that the cactus holds more water than the celery does, you can really get into a deep discussion with students about what kind of environment or habitat would that cactus be able to thrive in, and also the celery plant, and how different plants have different adaptations. The next activity I have for you is called Georgia Habitat Scramble. It's actually one that you could use at the end of the unit if you wanted. You could take this and make it your own. It's an amazing, amazing, amazing activity. However, it is based off of the old GPS standards, so you might have to change some of the wordings. But basically, the Georgia Habitat Scramble, you can see the picture of the Piedmont habitat right there. Each habitat, You have, like for the old GSE, we had barrier islands, reefs, swamp marshes, coastal plain, mountains, and Piedmont. But you have a little paper for each of those. Actually, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and show you because I have an example of this right now. Okay, so for each habitat, you have a background landscape, okay? So you have that. Then you have a checklist of all the plants and animals that are found in that habitat, okay? Then you're given all of the plants and animals for all of the habitats also on separate pages. So here's how I would do this with my students. I would have my students in small groups of 2 or 3 pick a habitat, a Georgia habitat, and they have to look at the checklist and do research on which of those animals belong in that habitat. You could have them make a poster. I've actually had teachers make shoebox dioramas of each habitat, but then they will use the pictures of the plants and animals. They will find them for their habitat and they will put that into their habitat diorama or poster or presentation, whatever, however you want to do it. But like I said, you are going to have to change the names on some of these to match the GSE standards now. But this is a great activity to do as a summative assessment to see how much your students learn. So they can make this model of their habitat and then they can present it to everyone as well. Okay, so that's an example activity. Another great activity for animal adaptations is an animal adaptation book. I helped a 3rd grade teacher create this a couple of years ago, but basically the project is creating a booklet describing and giving examples of the 5 major forms of adaptation, the ones in the standard. So we have camouflage, mimicry, warning coloration, hibernation, and behavior. You could even take out some of those and do migration instead of warning colorization, because that also that's kind of extending the idea of adaptations a little bit, but it tells you all of the guidelines, what to have on each page. They'll have a picture of the animal that exhibits that adaptation, 1 paragraph answering the questions, and they can be from magazines, from the computer, text can be typed or handwritten. Great way to add differentiation for your remote learners and your face-to-face learners. And then also you can give multiple grades for this. You can use this rubric and do an ELA grade, a writing grade, and a science grade for that. So who doesn't love that? So at the end of this unit, you have several options for assessing those adaptations. So you can have, by the end of 3rd grade, your students should be doing something called a claim evidence reasoning framework. And this is a little graphic organizer for the my claim, my evidence, my reasoning. But you'll just pose a question about that jackrabbit. So you could ask your students, this can be a simple summative question at the end of this unit. You could say, how do the ears on a jackrabbit help it survive? And then students, that's the question that you pose to your students, and then they come up with a claim, which is, I think that. You can give them sentence prompts if you want to differentiate for your students that need scaffolding. I think that the jackrabbit's ears help it to survive by. Okay, and then your evidence comes in. That's where your students will write down all the reasons why or why not the ears help a jackrabbit survive in its habitat. And then by the end of 3rd grade, they should be coming up with those reasonings. And reasoning is more like scientific law or the scientific principle behind why something happens or occurs naturally. And then I do have an example habitat unit test for you that covers the habitats and regions of Georgia and adaptations within that workshop model unit. So please use those resources. Mystery Science is a great resource for you. I believe some of the activities in this unit are from Mystery Science. And also there's some technology integration examples like Scholastic Study Jams They have some really great videos on plant and animal adaptations, but we're really going for both. We need plant and animal adaptations. Okay, conservation and pollution. Here we go. Anchoring phenomenon for conservation and pollution. That little photo right there of a Tybee Island sea turtle that's being rescued. Now this is a very small turtle, but this turtle unfortunately did not make it, but they wanted to show what happens to our turtles on the coastal Georgia shore. So they did cut open the stomach of this, and you can see all of the pollution and trash in that poor baby's stomach. So after viewing the photograph for 30 seconds, the students are going to come up with those questions. Some prompting that you can do is what animal is pictured, how did it get all that stuff in its body, what is that stuff? So we really want students thinking about how humans affect the environment. So the resources I have down for you for this unit it's a 1-week unit, a game called Foxes in the Forest. And basically the way you play the game is it's basically how can you're answering the question, how can pollution affect the survival of animals? And it gives you those learning goals. But you have the game board that you see right there where it says forest, polluted stream, factory pollution. And then you have some cutouts of little foxes, and it tells you what to do. And all you need is a paper bag and those cutouts of the foxes and that game board. And you go through 3 or 4 cycles of playing the game. And what happens is, like for example, on this page it says place 10 fox pieces and 2 pollution pieces in the bag and play the game. So they do that. And then you play. It gives you another game board that tells you what happens when you pull something out of the bag. So it's like you lost 2 foxes, or now the forest is polluted. So you have to keep playing and seeing what happens to the population of foxes based on what pollution cards you pull. So that's a really, really good engaging game for your students to play in small groups. They can also play this at home because you don't really need that many materials except for the handouts in that brown paper bag. A cute little do and don't after maybe watching a YouTube video or a brain pop. It gives them some examples on the side, like leave no trace at the beach, let go of balloons at the beach or anywhere. They're gonna put those pictures, so it's a cut and paste. So there's do's and don'ts, and then why. Pick up trash, pick up or touch wild turtles, pick up trash at the beach and other places. So do's and don'ts. And then you have a rubber band book. This comes from the Ames education book for 3rd grade. And the way you print that page out, and then you just fold it in half, and then fold it in half hamburger style, and then fold it in half again. And it's a reduce, reuse, recycle little mini book that students could read individually or in a small group station. One thing that I love to do when I'm doing pollution and conservation in 3rd grade is read the book, The Great Kapok Tree. This book is an amazing story about the way humans and other things affect environments when it comes to pollution. So I have several activities to go with that book. The first one is a menu. So you read the book and then they choose, this is great for differentiation or extension for your students. They choose 1 appetizer, 1 main dish, and 1 dessert as a summative assessment piece after this book. There's a think-tac-toe that they can do. And also, this is a great integration piece for ELA, but after you read it, the 9 rainforest animals and 1 child that speak to the man are listed in order of appearance in the story, and they have to, your students will explain their reasons for not wanting the man to cut down the great kapok tree. So it really has them thinking about reasons why we need to conserve and things like that. But I love, love, love anytime I can integrate an amazing science trade book with our units, I'm all for that. So that is the Great Kapok Tree for conservation and recycling. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and answer any questions that you guys might have about that. My two friends that joined today. Do you guys have any questions about the resources or anything that I shared today? Again, those unit plans are up in CTLS Teach underneath the topic navigator for habitats and adaptations. 2 weeks for adaptations and 1 week for pollution and conservation.
So are the worksheets there too? All of the worksheets are there?
So yes, on the unit plans, there's a direct link to all the resources for those plans. Some of these are extra activities, and I'm going to put that link into the teams right after this preview.
Oh, super.
So it's a whole OneDrive folder with all the resources that I just shared with the Great Kapok Tree and all that stuff ready right there for you. And
I like the Great Kapok Tree too. I think that's a good story for everybody to
Another one that's really good is A River Ran Wild. It's about the river that's next to a paper factory, and it goes through the years of industrialization and how the river changes. It's a really good one too. It's called A River Runs Wild. I think it's by Lynn Cherry.
Did you know if there's a video on it?
Oh yeah, I'm sure if you go to YouTube and type that in, I believe the author is Lynn Cherry. If you type it in, there's probably a read aloud.
A River Runs Wild. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that works for me. Okay. Yeah. I love it.
Good. Any questions, Ms. Kelly?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, Ms. Kelly. Haven't seen you in a long time. Good to see you.
Hi, Ms. Walker. How you doing? Thank you so much.
I hope you have